Okay, guys, we are live. My name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sihon. I am with Swiftfire. Go to swiftfire.org and grab the newsletter. There's been some hiccups in the platforms, as some of you may know, and the best way to stay informed and to know what's going on in general is to be on the newsletter, because I know it's kind of old school to do email. And also that is where you're going to get all the things that we aren't talking about on the platforms, especially if the platforms don't exist anymore. But so yeah, grab that. I have a great, awesome show here today. We have Rocco Nugent, or Rocco comma, back here with us. For those of you who saw our last episode together, we got lots of people who were just like, whoa, that was awesome. And lots of amazing feedback, lots of upgrades. And if you missed it, I'll actually provide it in the link so you can go back and connect with that. But for those who are kind of new to Rocco and who he is and what he's doing, I'm going to have him, talk a little bit to catch everybody up just real quick. And then the topic actually for today is about the crystalline consciousness for clarity in this season, because there's a lot of choices on the board right now, and people are in that space of making these choices, and clarity is an important role, and just sovereignty is an important role in maneuvering and navigating through some of this. And so I thought it would be great to have him back and just talk about what he's doing. But for the record, if you don't know anything about this guy, can you tell us a little bit, Rocco? Just a kind of a cliff note version to catch people up on who you are, what you're about, how you got here.
Blessings, everyone. Dr. Sharnael, thank you so much for having me again. I'm so tempted to be very bizarre and sarcastic in describing who and what I am.
I heard myself say it out loud, and then I was like, well, we could talk about sex. But anyway, no, That's not physically, that's how you got here. And also, I mean, in a very spiritual, mental, inspirational place of where you're at. Yes, in that space.
Jai, there's a lot of ways to describe it. Let me allow the most succinct way to describe it to kind of just blossom in front of me. Yeah, you can call me a clarity doula. I one time was just trying to describe for the best of me what I do for someone, and it ended up getting articulated as I am a epiphany gardener. So the state of clarity, which I understand as the nature of what most have kind of called this thing called Christ, but I see Christ as the most misunderstood concept probably on the planet, maybe other than love, but it's all very subjective. But yeah, I'm an artist, I'm an alchemist, I'm a conscious reference point and servant to the divine in everything that I interface with. And it seems like most often that shows up as clarity, the need for clarity, the call for clarity. And I watched our last interview back, and I have the tendency to make unending run-on sentences. So I'm gonna try to cap some of that and maybe reel me back if I get too out of control.
I like the run-on sentences, and I love the little rabbit trails. So that's fine. You're good.
Cool.
Yes. So in where we're at, some people could look at where we're at as good or bad, and pressuring, lots of pressure, anxiety. Everything is perspective, as you know. So what is it that you are doing to stay above the snake line in peace and rest and love and sovereignty in the midst of whatever perception they're trying to create or deliver in this time and season where we are now.
Well, let's just go right to the heart of it. There is a very easily discernible difference between pretty much the entirety of humanity. Of, like, you can say it's this group and this group, and it's ego-based beings and crystalline-based beings. Yeah, there's all kinds of gradients in between, but it feels like my strongest calling is to talk about Christ, and not in a Christian way. I'm coming from Siddha, Raja Kriya Yoga, an occult, esoteric background because of my kind of traumatic experience of being a Christian with very little clarity. And then as soon as kind of the departure of it, I started seeing the kind of originator of the concept of Christ, a dude that was an alchemist and a yogi. And unpacking that led me on this breadcrumb trail to, the path of paths, Wu Wei, the Tao, yoga, union, alchemy. And so, in this time of corona, shmona virus, and pandemic, and I'm going to go into a little bit of a soliloquy here, but stay with me because it directly answers that question of, like, what am I doing to, you call it, stay in equilibrium in a time where polarity seems like it's more polarized than ever. The culture is more polarized than ever. And maybe even it isn't, but at least because of the internet, it appears that it's more polarized than ever. But I would also say that it is more polarized than ever. The only thing that's ever in stress is the ego. The only thing that is ever stressed out is the ego mind, which I call the tibis, almost like your funny bone. It's the time-based identity structure, and it's built on trauma. And this world that we look out inside, I don't want to like do spiritual bypass techniques because I know that's probably triggering for some, but like, all right, on a real level, you're at work and you're getting forced to either take the vaccine or not. You want to put graphene and who knows what else inside of your bloodstream and molecularly alter your genetics or not. This is a real practical thing that a lot of humans are dealing with right now. If you're not familiar with him, look up a dude named Paul Selig. He has a book series that I think one's called Alchemy is the one I'm on right now, and then Realization is the one that comes prior, and then the third one in this 3-part series is called The Kingdom. He understands that this wisdom is moving through him and that he's not the origin point for the wisdom, just like I recognize Rocco is technically the device that I am expressing through, but I'm technically not Rocco. Nor is this beautiful being actually, in actuality, is not really actually Dr. Sharnael. The word is the name of the vessel, but it's not the animation component of the vessel. There's a place that Paul Selig introduced me to, at least in a term, but prior to hearing him use this term, I did my best to reside there as much as I could, and it's called the upper room. The upper room is a place that right now, if you're watching this or you're listening to this, the chances are that you're functioning as if you're a person, and your predominant sense of identity is basically in between your chin and the top of your skull. Although you can right now focus on wiggling your right pinky toe, you can focus on your left shoulder moving. And then for a real quick second, just remember a playground that you were at as a kid. Just briefly, you can just now notice that you're not your left shoulder, nor your pinky toe, nor the playground. And so nor can you be this vessel that has changed every single day. So you're the awareness that's animating. You're the awareness that's listening. And you're not just in the skull, but this modern humanity hyper-identification with the body is really the only thing to evolve out of, called spirituality. But the mind isn't who we are, nor the thoughts that we're having. And so if that's the case, then there's really actually no decision needing to be made about a vaccine. whether to not do it or to do it. And now that's probably potentially confusing, but it's only confusing for the mind. I have a teacher that talks about attraction mapping. Attraction mapping is so much more helpful to look at how to navigate a situation, because you're just looking at the quantum field. You're looking at the actual field of existence, the field of reality in front of you, before thee. And you have magnetism towards some stuff. You have demagnetism away from other stuff. That's a very different way of looking at how to make choices. It's very different than thinking I'm me and me is in a situation, and if I make this choice, then I miss out on this stuff. If I say no to the vaccine, I miss out on my job. If I say yes to the vaccine, I miss out on potentially my sovereignty or da-da-da-da, whatever it is. What Rocco is suggesting, what Paul Selig has suggested, what Yogananda Ji and all of these Rajakriya yogis, Yeshua, moving through me now, is suggesting, is saying just drop that identity that's the one that's struggling. And you'll see that you can't make the choices that you have conviction against it. Well, what part of you has conviction against it? That's this crystalline self that can't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Its calling is honesty. Its calling as a human being is to be honest or truthful.
Yes.
Or in integrity. Interesting that the word integrity has something to do with like a moral issue, but also you talk about like a building. It's a geometrical, it's a geometry-based issue, and where weight is distributed.
Yes.
If your weight is distributed on your mind, you'll have stress, just like a pillar on a building, that if there's not equilibrium distributed in that structure, one pillar is getting too much stress, it's going to collapse at some point. Collapse, lapse, relapse, lapse, quit, stop, but in coordination with an event. The event's really just an excuse to let your ego die, because it's not the thing that you really are. They're like stilts. And at some point you get shin splints and your feet are hurt and you're like, why is it so hard to walk? It's like you're not really actually walking on your real feet. You have to get out of this structure that we've been caused to think we are, but you can just take it off like a helmet. And you're like, oh my God, I thought I was that dirty visor. I thought I was looking through this, I happen to have some old glasses here that still have the sticker on them. It's like, imagine looking through and you're like, man, there's this sticker. How do I get this thing that's stuck on my identity? No matter where I go, there's this Ray-Ban logo. No matter where I look, I can't get out of me or with this logos, this myth ethos. So what am I doing to stay centered in these times? I stopped. I gave my life to God and I said, you do it. But then God was like, all right, well, do you understand what you're doing? Or do you just want to surrender and then not be able to function and talk to, like, you know, your baby boomer mom and dad about what you're actually doing with your bills and your finances? And I was like, all right, well, I would like to actually have some kind of equilibrium between those. I don't want to just be one of these millennial spiritual bypasser persons who's just like, I don't believe in taxes. That's probably not the way either. So how Christ resolves all issues is because the ego mind is like psychic mucus. And it's like this logo that we keep thinking we are, but we can take it off and see that we're not the story, we're not the decisions, we're not the pressures of society, and anything that's pressurizing us through society can't be us. And if it feels like it's causing us that experience of confusion, it's the con of fusion. It's the lie attempting to fuse our witnessing self with a reality that we're not, which is why it doesn't feel good. And so I suppose you could say, you got to just really get clear on who your master is. And if your master is society and you fear missing out on society, then you got to get that tattooed on your face, because it's a mask that you're wearing that says who your daddy is, that says who your God is, that says who your guard is. You get guarded by society, you get protection, called herd, call it herd immunity, or call it herd belonging. As soon
Ownership.
as you, yeah, as soon as you sign up to that
Slavery.
game, that
Yeah.
that chattel herd, you lose touch with the thing that is eternal in you, and you marry the thing that is not eternal, that's very much time based. So I'd say that I'm now in this place where I practice assisting others in desegregating their mind body spirit complex out of the matrix, and more registering with their atma. The atma is the, basically, from my understanding, the yogic word for the crystal self, or the crystalline self that is prior to the ego mind, and actually the source from where our identity as a person comes from. So yeah, staying in between those two worlds, you could say, is how I'm navigating these times on a very literal basis, because I can't stop being a person, and I have a calling. And shout out to you for holding me accountable to our time that we agreed on having this call at. I was talking to my partner about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually really grateful that she checked me. She was like, hey man, we had a schedule to have this call, this little interview thing. You can't just go with the flow all the time. Like, the movie starts, at this time o'clock. This is called, being accountable to a commitment. And so that's a moment where we got to interface with the matrix. And then there's these other moments where you're like, yeah, I know I said I was going to go to dinner, but my gut doesn't feel good. I got to cancel because my calling is telling me it's more important than this other thing that I had committed to. So yeah, 1 foot in this world, 1 foot in the other world. And I'd say that that's the meaning of Yeshua's word is, right now, I'm with the Father. Right now, I'm in this world with you, but I'm not of this world. And so more and more finding a sadhana. I basically help people find their sadhana. A sadhana is a practice that helps you alchemize your mind trauma identity into collapsing the ego identity's hook tether moments, so that it's easier to pull your anchors out of the matrix and reside with the infinite source, absolute clarity within. I'll end the answer there.
Yeah, and I like the word integrity. That's actually a big theme in my practice and or teaching, which I can't say is mine, but I'm just saying the word integrity means to be fully integrated. I like your visual that you gave with the building and or your feet and just the balance of that structure. And for the record, everybody watching, if you would do me a favor and share and tag and get this out, because I forgot to mention, this is going to be up for a little bit, and then I will be pulling it down to go on to some other platforms, since we're talking about some kind of century-ish type conversations and or topics. But with integration, mind, body, spirit, and being fully integrated, we do have the backup physically and physiologically when we're in our truth and we're doing what is on the path that we perceive that we're supposed to be doing. And when we're not on that path, then it's actually a takeaway. You have you're flooded with the cell. The cells are flooded from the chemistry that causes your body to get old and fat and not digest, and poor immunity, and just cause you to feel weak. Which is why muscle testing it actually is a thing, and it works. And I understand too. I agree with this whole balance of integrity and time, which what is that, or accountability and showing up when you say, and then also that being fluid. And I know I said this and now this thing is happening that I didn't foresee, and having to shift gears with either a text or a comment and going, hey, this came up, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a new agreement that's made. And also see that, you mentioned these conversations and helping people to kind of be in the balance of one foot in the matrix and one foot out of, the real life bills or taxes or whatever versus, staying above the snake line and maybe not participating as much as possible in some ways. But I would imagine any conversations with some people that you may have with this kind of information, people are just like, what? Or, kind of like, no, because it's so real to them, these perceptions versus what truth really is. And I guess for me, sometimes it's like, how do you do the thing where you're doing the things that are mandatory and whatever, and you gotta, and blah, 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 and take care of the kids and, whatever, the job, whatever, versus like staying in sovereignty, keeping fluid, being in nature. It is, for me, a choice. And it's a constant choice, like a moment to moment to moment to moment, or a second to second to second to second, really. And kind of like deliberating that duality and that polarization, especially right now, being amplified with all the things that are really heating up with, okay, we're at a calendar. It's however much on the day of the month, if you're looking at Saturn, and those rings that are so limiting, and it feels like the walls are coming in on some choices that are having to be made by the end of this month specifically, without feeling like crazy, and keeping sane. And or you said that you mentioned you're working with people to figure out or remember how people can be there. Like, what are some of the things that you talk to when you're sharing with people, and being that doula of getting people back to center or truth? Like, what is a couple physical things like that you would suggest?
Well, first I'd assess wherever anybody's biochemistry allows them to be. Everyone's got different biochemistry. So if I'm interfacing with you and your gut is so bloated that you can't even begin to think about some of these mystical esoteric terms, it's not relevant. I would more so start with like, all right, what are we doing on a daily basis with your food intake? Mm-hmm. I see you walk towards me when you hug me, and your knees are pocketing inward, and your toes are pointed in, and your chest is concave, but your hips are flexed out. I'd be like, all right, well, you got some kind of a issue with your solar plexus. Your solar plexus it's not tight. Or long story short, I could give you a handful of different examples of how misalignment or non-alignment or lack of alignment shows up physiologically. But that's probably the fastest way that I get a sense of who I'm working with and what I'm working with, which is trauma. That's what Eckhart Tolle talks about as the pain body. You see someone walking down anywhere in the world and they have a very bloated physical body. It's very round, what's referred to as obesity or overweight. Their adrenal glands are overworking just to sustain their heart rate. Whatever the blood, heart rate is, I'm sure it's working really hard just to stay upright. You spend time with someone like that. When they sit down, it's like this huge relief just to stop activity. So to answer the question, first and foremost, I'd see where the body is. If the body is in a certain state of chronic inflammation, then you can't really even begin to talk about any esoteric. It's not really relevant. So I'd assist by getting in the body with a sadhana. Let's do 10 rounds of Suryanamaskar, and let's see where there's most pain. Where's there most intense?
So what is that? Because I don't even know. So tell me, what is that?
So, you know what a burpee is?
Mm-hmm.
So burpees is like push up, jump up, clap, right? Then down to another push up. That's one burpee, right? Oh, did I lose you? You there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Suryanamaskar is basically the yogic burpee, which I don't know if I've ever heard that said, and I don't know if any yogis are out there being like, that's not true, but that's how I see it. I see it as like, let's see where your base level physical health is. Let's do Suryanamaskar. So it means start with prayer pose, inhale, hands up, exhale, forward fold, inhale, right foot back, then go to down dog, which you've probably heard of, then lower down this thing called cobra. You stretch your back, then you go to back down dog, bring that foot next to the other foot, stand up. That's one side. You do that on the other side. That's one round. So now we're stretching the right hip, and we're stretching the shoulders, then we're stretching the back, we're stretching the sternum, we're stretching the solar plexus. And all that stretching means is elongating. So we're seeing where your capacity is to relax. Can you be relaxed in a stressful situation on these? If an architect is looking at how secure the integrity of a structure is, they'd probably do some kind of a test. I don't know what they do, but like a bridge, like how does it respond to earthquake? Well, it's a way to test its strength, its condition, its health, its sturdiness, etc. So in that same way, Suryanamaskar is basically, it means to salute the sun, or the sun salutation. So sometimes people actually do it facing the east in the rising, setting, morning sun, rising sun. But it's also recognition that which is animating you, that which is your source for life, which in a kind of biophysical way anchors in the solar plexus, that some people refer to as the Atma, or atomic self, which does not have a mind, which is pure energy, as a crystalline effulgence of light. That's the Christ self. So you could say that the sun salutation that's what a Surya Namaskar. Namaskar means salutation. Surya is the sun. So it's basically like when people say like, oh, let's do a yoga flow, they're probably going to do Surya Namaskar. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump in. So my background with ministry in the past, I'm not there now, been out a few decades, but as you know, the programs are yoga's bad, blah, blah, blah. So any of this would be like a trigger, not for me, but I'm just saying it could be. I know, right? And I remember I actually just posted something maybe 2 decades ago, or at least 15 years ago, when Facebook first came out. I just said, hey, has anybody ever done yoga? And I got like literally 450 comments almost in less than 4 minutes of just like, that's the devil, there's spirits involved, you're going to get demonized, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I was just asking. I wasn't saying I did it or I'm going to or whatever. Anyway, of course I did. Because on a science level, I was like, I just felt the pull. I went. I had this crazy emotional release. Did not expect it. I know
That's what happened to me too, by the way.
I was like embarrassingly could not keep my shit together, crying on the floor, like with people like that kind of like crying to where I'm like, okay, let me get up and go to the bathroom because this is super embarrassing, and couldn't really finish, and then finally had to come back, and then I got the last half. But so I left there going like, okay, what just happened? And I had studied trauma, neuroscience, physics, but this caught me off guard for sure. And then I went a second time. Same thing happened, different place, different person, different, but just, and then anyway, the third time. So then I'm like really studying and looking into like what in the world. And I had studied the limbic system. I'd studied, trauma release and what have you. And what my conclusion in my whatever mix of studies and or science and or just aha takeaway was that, we know the limbic system traps trauma in the body when we can't deal. And it's like, oh, she can't deal with this right now, let's just put it wherever. And I used to think that it would go like some organ, or knee or what have you. And it sits dormant until it's time and it'll give a signal. And then you have that opportunity to go, okay, I'm feeling this signal. It's time for it to release, and it can move out. But we often look at signals like inflammation or what have you as, oh, well, let's go to the doctor and turn this off so we don't feel it, but it still doesn't make it go away.
Suppress
So
it.
yes. So when
That's the Western mind approach.
exactly. So what I came to understand is that these traumas will hide out in muscles that aren't being used as well. So when we stretch in ways that maybe we haven't done in a while or ever done, it actually releases it into the body, and it can cause a signal or a trigger or anything, something, and a release, because now it's like coming out, and we detox through tears. And some things will not detox any other way, diet, whatever, but only through tears. And this is a way that it's like the body can help itself move these things through. And then, of course, Kundalini, which you can call it whatever. But when that alignment happens, not only are the lymphs pushed so everything moves again, but that alignment will go all the way from the spine up to the brain. It starts to activate brain cells that maybe haven't been activated in a long time, and or create new cells, new blood. I mean, there's a rush chemically and on a physiological level that cannot be done any other way. That, I mean, maybe there's DMT and stuff, but that's another subject. So it
Well, this is how you can manually release DMT.
Yeah. Yes. And so there's something really to it. I mean, when we were talking one time, I forget, text or whatever, you're like, oh, gotta go teach in a class. And I was like, wish I was there. And or sometimes forget, like, oh, I have a yoga mat here at the house, I could do this, and don't always remember that this is a big thing that can help myself. So thank you for bringing this up for many people who may be watching, that this could be a way to just like not maintain, I don't like that, but thrive in this perception that we're at in Saturn.
And I'd also say it's some practice with the intention of alchemizing improper identity isn't just a workout. You're not just doing this for your body. You're actually recognizing your body's in the way. It's in the way because you could say it's being misused. And so it's atrophying in these particular areas. And so by doing a practice with this physical anchoring, it's the physical that you're actually moving. You're doing the thing with the physical, but you're doing it with the intention of alchemizing the energy that's stuck. That's going to bring up emotions much faster than you saying, I'm going to effort my way through 10 more push-ups. And receiving those internal signals that comes from moving the body like that. It has the ability to bring up stuck energy and stuck emotion, repressed memories, and all kinds of stuff that can be stuck in the field. But wanted to just say, if you're like, your mat's there, you're like, I should do this or da 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 da. And also finding another person that you like that energy, you like their energy signal, you like their alignment. You look at them on YouTube and they're like, man, they look healthy, happy, whatever it is, which I have several yoga offerings if it's interesting. But following a signal is sometimes much easier to do for someone than generating their own signal. So if you find someone who has a style of alchemy that looks magnetic for you, why are you so interested in doing? I gotta do it myself. Yeah, they look like they did it. Let's see what happens if I follow that.
Yes, and energetically, they say if you don't know a person, then you can look at their 5 friends and see that that's probably how that person's going to be, because energy is transferable. And when you're picking a coach or a mentor or someone, I mean, we are the body, and yoga actually means union. So it's not bad. I'm not picking someone because we need to be dependent, but picking someone who has got whatever, just like if you want someone to do, to to help with a tooth, you're not going to go to like an eye doctor. Or if you need an attorney that does real estate, you're not going to go, get the ice cream truck guy to do it. It's like, get someone who has a success rate and
in
seeing
what you're
success.
wanting.
Yes. Like, why pick a mentor that isn't there yet?
So this is a term that's so triggering for the Western mind, or at least in my experience of sharing this term with Western minds, it immediately goes like it's very interesting, and for understandable reasons, because there's a lot of trauma around this term in the Western world because of abuse of this word. But the word guru is really two parts. It's ru and gu. I often get this backwards. Ru is remover, gu is darkness. So
Wow.
guru just means remover of darkness. And how my teacher, my sifu, my guru, one of my gurus taught me, he said, anytime you see a grown-up see a kid that is playing with a pair of scissors, and that grown-up says, hey, whoa, whoa, and they take the scissors, if you just zoom out for a second and look from spirit's perspective and say, what just happened? Why would that entity try to protect that entity from harming itself because of lack of education as to the danger of this kind of, what just happened? Why would that being try to help that being not hurt itself? That's guru. That kid doesn't know how dangerous it is. You could just be running, ha ha ha. It's scary. If you've seen a kid get, I'm having fun, watch him out, and jumps off of the swing set and falls. Life is dangerous. It's dangerous being a human monkey creature. So anytime there's someone who has a proper alignment and understanding for how to maneuver a device, whether that's the body or a bicycle or neurochemistry or heart surgery, anyone who helps another one learn is called guru, which means we kind of have all helped somebody and we've all been helped. So finding a mentor is, I would say
key.
That's a funny phrase. I would say. Well, why don't you say it? Well, I would say it.
I always catch myself with that too.
I would say this. I would say this, but I'm not going to.
I'm saying
I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
No, but I have noticed in the work I've done in my own alignment seeking and magnetism and finding, and also sharing with others and talking with others about their own navigation. If I noticed anything that's kind of like a predominant affliction preventing many from their own alignment awakening, it's trying to do too much on their own. Mm-hmm. And this is also something, you talk about pandemic, you talk about what can we do. This is actually a huge key code. The colleges of the world, the university system, it's not going to disappear overnight, but everyone listening to this frequency right now, there are so many online courses that have the exact thing that you in your highest embodiment and empowered version, like if right now you can just click into feeling which version of you would you feel most lit up being, that version of you and then the version of you now, there's a bridge from it. You can actually dissolve that bridge in a matter of in no time at all. But if you want to experience the dissolution of that bridge progressively, probably through learning or embodiment or some kind of some kind of learning, some kind of alchemy through your misunderstanding, or some kind of acknowledgement, the adding of knowledge in the moment, there's an online course that is your bridge. There's an online teacher that is your bridge guide. There is an online in this thing. You can look through this pixel light and there's someone on the other side who God told them they work for you. God told me I'm really actually useless unless I'm being used. That's cool. And if I'm being used in service, then I need this to get to who I work for. My boss is on the other side of this. I don't have nothing to talk about right now unless Dr. Sharnael says, hey, Rocco, it's time to talk. Someone reaches out. I just went to a cafe here in Texas and run into this friend from a while back. He's like, oh, man, haven't seen you. I'm like, man, how are you? He's like, I'm a dad now. I'm like, wow, congrats. How's that going? He's like, man, it's cool, but you know, I'm like, wow, that's exciting. How's it going? He's like, man, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And he mentions therapy. I'm like, man, that's a great thing to be called towards. I'm sure right now is of all times, probably when you're interested in it. And he's like, yeah, don't you do something with that? I'm like, yeah, kind of. What exactly do you do? I was like, well, sometimes I work with people with psychedelics and how to move through what most of us call an ego death, and then how to integrate who we really are with what happened to us so that there's less separation between what we experience as our pain and our trauma, and then who we really are, and how that's always going to point us at our calling. And I said a couple things. We were at this cafe, and he's like, man, do I still have your phone number? But otherwise, I have no purpose. So I had to go and seek my own alignment. You had to go seek your own alignment. Then at some point, you got called to do this podcast, to do this show. At some point, I got called to share what happened to me with someone else. And that someone else felt like it was relevant for them. So this is how the light wants to move through us like mirrors. It's like a big chamber. I see that in this book that's being written through me called Moon Theory, there's a nature to the matrix. Mm-hmm. It's scary. It's Maya. Oh, but yeah, and there's a nature to it, and it always reflects the light. Mm-hmm. It doesn't create new light, but it's always going to
angle. Reflect.
Yeah. Boom, 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 boom. And it gets to zoom, it gets to you through these different echoes, these echoes of somewhere else. But if you trace it back to where it comes from, where's its source, it's like following the light. And we are all like that for each other. We all have some kind of something. And some of us have way less for another one than, you know, Joe Schmo, Bob, Rob, whoever. Maybe I don't have much of a connection with him. Maybe you don't feel called to have him on this show. But maybe he's called to be on someone else's show. Maybe he's a perfect match for someone else. And so in that same way, we're not always meant for that teacher. Or that teacher's not always meant for us. And by trying it out and by kind of investigating, what is this thing in me called intuition? Why do I have an intuitive compass towards something and not towards a different thing? By building the relationship with that, it's like you were always meant to go here. And by getting there, there's something for you there, and it's present, and you unwrapped it, and it definitely contains your gift in some way.
Well, I have a few things. So first of all, I love that. See, we're all diverse. So of course we're going to attract different people and or not be the thing for someone else. And I very early in this, I would take it personal if someone like said some troll thing or whatever. I was just like, oh, but they don't know me. Like, who cares now? I was just like, then you're not for me. It's fine. And I'm not for you. And you have someone else. And that's why I appreciate so many different people doing different things, because like a missionary in Africa or whatever, I went to Africa. That was like a big goal, blah, 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 did it. Now I'm like, okay, did that, off my list, and I don't feel called to that. So anyone who wants to, yay, I celebrate you doing that. And, you know, or whatever, being a fireman or whatever. It's like, if we could just celebrate where everyone is, that's, I mean, good, because that's all the facets of Christ consciousness and the light of being that to direct and reflect. And then also going back to the guru term, which I love that breakdown of words. But
one thing on that last part, though, is that's where this, you could call it the left's one of their main behavioral traits, but it's really kind of shows up on the right and the left in terms of political polarity. But this whole thing with virtue signaling, it's often a signpost of someone's ego getting a little bit too in the way of the light moving through, because if that's your calling, do that. Why are you pushing it on me? Yeah, that's great. Do that. That sounds great.
Exactly. It's called unconditional love versus conditional love. Love is limitless. There aren't conditions. So when you start getting into someone like, this is what you have to do, then you get the choice to back up and reflect and go, is that my thing? And I'm going to keep doing that. But anyway, going back to guru, doctor, that word doctor too is an interesting thing, because as a doctor, naturopathically, of course there's the MD Western, or even in divinity or theology, doctor just means teacher. And what any doctor should be doing is teaching. That is the actual word, to teach, to be a teacher or a guru of someone who is going to help doula, facilitate, teach, educate, inform, information, bring in to a formation of the being of who we are, and or the perspective of who we can be in Christ. And whether it's medical, spiritual, inspire to in spirit, whatever. When we are the doctor, by not just paper, but by all the integrity of the word teacher, then there are opportunities to shift. And, some people aren't doctoring. That's okay. Let them do that, and whatever. I'm going to continue teaching. That's my role and what I feel my passion is. You mentioned therapy and being a therapist. I love that word too. Comes from therapeuo, which is a word, if you look in scripture or anywhere else, a lot of times they'll use that word therapeuo in the word as a substitute for healing. So when you see a miraculous healing in the Bible, let's say, for example, which I'm not going to like talk back and forth on if the Bible is what, anyway, that's another thing, but written differently, left out a lot of stuff, that
But there's lots of code. There's definitely codes.
But there's codes and there's truth within when we can get to the main code of source in that. There's layers and layers of code. And also therapeuo is, so every time you see the word healing, if you actually look at the actual word therapeuo, there's only a couple words where it was substituted with a miraculous instant healing. Most of them, I would say 98% of all the healing words in scripture are therapeuo, meaning over time, making choices over and over and over again to get to wholeness, restoration, fullness, peace, love, restored again, atonement. Yes. So, and or virtue, which is truth. And so a lot of people, when they don't get their, hands laid on or whatever, the instant thing that they want, they're just like, oh, this sucks. And, but even Jesus himself had therapeuo healings, meaning laid hands, talk to someone, wasn't instant. They had to go and do something. They had to go to this city and do whatever. There were instructions, and like Luke wasn't writing out prescriptions. He's actually a doctor, teacher, whatever, but he wasn't like prescribing, so I love all this like word play anyway. But anything about this, I would love any feedback on that. We just have a few minutes, but it feels like a minute has gone by.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. I'm not partial to any way or any pathway that someone comes to their calling to heal or to remedy, but it shows up for all of us at a moment where we're like, it's time, or I got to stop running away. And it can either happen because we choose it, because we know that we need it, or we know that it's good, or we know that, blah, 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 put whatever kind of reason behind it. Or it can happen because you waited too long and now some kind of disasters happen and there's nowhere else to go.
Pain is a great teacher. Pain will make a lot of people choose differently, unfortunately. And sometimes it's too late, but pain seems to be a topic, not only physically, mentally, spiritually right now, but there are people who are feeling it and have the opportunity at this minute to make new choices. What is that going to be? Who knows? It's up to
if it's interesting for any of those present, there's a teaching from a text called the Law of One, the Ra teachings, the teachings of Ra, where it references a yogic concept, but it's also in various other places. It doesn't really matter where it comes from, but it references 7 densities, which is really the musicality of this realm that we're in. Not to overly scan it, but you just pointed at something that's very relevant for 3rd density, which is investigating the pain. And this is where what Eckhart Tolle talks about as the pain body, it lives in third density. When you start moving into your higher callings, pain is really less and less present, and you're actually less investigating the manifested pain, but you're more so investigating what caused the manifested pain. And this is also where my calling is, because personally, I saw that there's this loop that can keep happening. And I was in a loop for a while where I was like, oh, this is wrong. Oh, this is wrong. Oh, this is wrong. And then I saw what was really wrong was the identity that was addicted. It was addicted to something being wrong, because there's something always to fix in that place. But once you start getting into self-realization and Raja Kriya Yoga, Siddhapath, which is all just called self-realization, you start seeing the actual identity that you were functioning as is the thing that was addicted to the idea / perceived reality of something being wrong. If you're interested in that refined healing, there's only one thing that ever needs to be healed, which is your primary established sense of identity. But once you turn that gateway, and there is a tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell would call it, there's no turning back, because the majority of your solar self momentum is now on this precipice that you can't ever kind of get back. Once you shift into your called enlightenment, atonement, awakening, healing, remedy, awakening, whatever you want to call it, it's the shift that you've been waiting for. It's the thing that you've been waiting for. It's the thing that we've all been waiting for. But yeah, just to the concept of healing and all that stuff, there's only really one thing. But if you're functioning from third density, then there's a lot of things. There's all kinds of things. There's lifetimes, infinite lifetimes worth of things that you could spend time healing and focusing on and making it about. For the one sensitive enough to hear the silent symphony, your eyes and your ears will only lead you astray. And there is a place that the all healing moment heals all things, and it's not accessed through the body mind. Rather, you turn the body mind around and you access it immediately. But that might take years to build up to do.
Yes, and I know that you're study the stars and the galaxies and what have you, and we're literally in that pocket positioning of the ether now, of the same. Last time it was like this was 1776. So
something with Uranus and Pluto.
Well, first of all, we're in retrograde, but yeah,
Mercury's retrograde, and Libra new moon was like yesterday or the day before, right?
And we have a full moon coming up, I believe the 18th. But our country, as America, has not ever been in this exact situation according to its birth chart since 1776, which means there's a collective here that is going to be affected in the ether and or making new choices, and who knows what that ends up to be. And I believe, this is a rebirth. This is literally an awakening.
Many see it as so.
So yes. Anyway, I'm thinking a part 3.
I can't wait. It feels great. It feels like there's a kind of dharmic transference that's happening just by us saying yes to showing up and allowing this dialogue to happen.
Yes, and I mean I've had you on a couple panels, but this is our second individual, dual interview. And yes, I will get some dates for you, and we will get that on for November if that's cool with you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In the meantime, you do offer online classes, counsel, therapeutic, whatever, online, through the phone. Of course, you do it in person too. As a matter of fact, you're in the middle of a weekend with somebody, and tell us how we can find you, how we can connect with that. There may be many here who are sparked and ignited to feel that is a part of their future and or present. Let us know. Give us a little bit on that.
Thank you. Throughout this call, I've been tuning into the very pleasant equanimity of this cat creature behind you. And
this is Blue.
Blue, hi Blue. Yeah, very snuggly. Yeah, so anything can be found from the link tree on my Instagram, which is at Rocco Moon, ROCCOMOON. Moon means mirror. So what the main thing I offer really is a mirror work, which is a form of, there's gradients to it. Self-realization is a really fun place to be, but you can't really begin to realize who you are if there's all kinds of trauma that's preventing you from even being able to feel ready to that, for that. So in the link tree, there's this button that says services offered, and everything from post-breakup resolution, where I work with what's referred to as the Akashic field, and I see why two souls have been partnered, and then also why they're departing. A mirror session is I work with individuals' Merkaba or Merkabic structure, or light and physical body interweaving. Yoga, Christ, Buddha, these things meet and bind and together in this thing here that I move through called Rocco. And yeah, art is also really fun. So I do art mentorships and sometimes just artistic creative engineering. So it's like being a creative engineer is helping someone with a creative problem, or helping find a solution to a metaphysical situation. But yeah, all that can be found on Instagram, and website being restructured right now. The online course is called Moon Alchemy Program, and it's Moon means miss out on nothing. So it's really about empowerment with enlightenment, self-realization components after there's the empowerment, which is definitely based on proper identification. So clarifying who you are first, being empowered from that place and not from the ego. So it's kind of half and half, realization and empowerment. And then the next course that's coming out soon is called the Mirror Alchemy Program, which is definitely more so on the realization side of it, and it's a bit more into the adept frequencies and less on the empowerment kind of practical worldly stuff, although it definitely deals with Dharma and how your trauma is really like your partnered identity with the physical world that's actually calling you to heal yourself so that you can be of service to someone else or a group or a frequency or a signal or a channel in the collective. And that's coming soon, finishing the website with that as well. And this book, Moon Theory, is moving through me as well, which missing out on nothing has become kind of another word for Christ, because that's the part of us that's never missing anything. And yeah, FOMO is the main thing that shows us that that's not who we are. So those are a couple of things, but it's all on Instagram, Rocco Moon. And yeah, as always, Dr. Sharnael, thank you for having me. Thanks for meeting my mom and then feeling into my field and welcoming me into this connection. And I look forward to all that's to come.
Awesome. Same. And yes, I'm definitely going to get with you. We got to get our appointment set down maybe next week if you're available too for the mirroring. I'm going to do it myself. So I encourage you guys, if you feel a yes, to connect with him and see what pieces he has and or part of the picture for you to get to that restored process. And please do your due diligence in sharing this, getting in and out, tagging. You never know who someone may see this and go, oh my gosh, and then that's the one thing they needed to hear, or to find that peace and truth and love, and or make the decisions and choices that we have at this point. And go to swiftfire.org. Definitely get on the newsletter, especially with some of these platforms that have disappeared literally for a few hours a day last week. That was interesting. But if you're on the newsletter, then we can find you and let you know the schedule of events and who's coming on and what's going on. And then also, I do want to mention, so I have the Science of Miracles, which I have to send that to you because I didn't ever get that second address from you. But it's coming out on audio in the next week, which has been, I felt like, I guess, a little stuck in getting that done for some reason, mostly because of some of my own internal stuff of actually putting it out there with my voice and narrating. But my mother is technically legally blind, and my grandmother is blind, and so they weren't able to read this book. And so I was like, you know what, I choose to get this in an audio where both of them can hear their this information and apply these techniques and formulas to get their own miracles. And had a lot of miracles just stepping through and making that choice already, with even the producer and the people involved in the project. We're having miracles happen spontaneously. And I was actually like, why haven't I done this a long time ago? But I really do believe that timing is now, and especially for the season that we're in, that this is something that it can be heard and imparted and to ignite even with the book. So be aware that this is coming up in the next week or so, and I encourage you, if you get a yes, to go ahead and get the book and see how you feel. But anyway, love you guys. Share, tag. This is going to be coming down, but I'm going to put it up on my other platforms. And love you, Rocco. Appreciate you and your fullness and who you are, what you're doing on the planet for humanity. And we'll be in touch soon. And we'll talk soon, guys. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Peace.